Ready, Susie?
It should be connected now. It should be live.
Good. Okay. It is 7 o'clock. Today's date is January 19th, 2021. It's the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Town of Victor. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Next on the agenda is approval of the December 8th, 2020 minutes. I'd like to entertain a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Fred. A second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Donna. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, we have two applications today, the Hermann Garage Edition and the Canzano New Home. I'm going to presume that both applicants, it's the first time here, so we're just going to walk through it quickly on how this is going to look. What we will do is each applicant will have an opportunity to make their presentation so that the board has a good idea of what it is that and what kind of variance that they're looking for. We have reviewed the papers, so we're going to try and streamline that. At that point, then, once the applicant has had an opportunity to review and make their presentation, rather, to the board then is going to ask some questions and hone in on exactly what it is that you're looking for and apply the 5 criteria, and that you should have seen on your application. There's probably going to be an opportunity that the board is going to want to also ask questions of the code enforcement officer. They have made some comments. And at that point, then we will take a look at, I know that at least on the Canzano application, there was an email that we received from a Philip Nelson. So that's the opportunity for the public to make comments, whether it be for or against. If there are further exhibits, by all means, you're going to have an opportunity to present them. So we will give the applicant every chance that they can to make their presentation. With that, if there are no other questions, we will start with the Hermann Garage Edition. Nicholas, you'll be making the presentation, or is that your son?
Yeah, we were just finishing up some dinner here. I got a couple around.
You're gonna
noisy back here.
Are you going to send him in if it gets a little too tough, or?
Yeah, if it gets tough, we'll bring
okay.
more and see if we can spot it up a little bit.
Okay, not to worry, not to worry. Okay, so your application is that you want to put a 12-foot garage addition with a 1-foot eave. The code requires a 15-foot side setback, and you're looking for 8 feet. So we also know that there have been some other similar additions in the neighborhood onto the garages. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's accurate. If you're looking at that diagram, if you go 1, 2, 3 houses to the left, they did the same thing, and they built a 3-car garage to the south, I guess, of their house.
Okay, so looking at that aerial that you have, I think your next door neighbor would be 1068. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Have you discussed that with them at all, and on what your proposal is?
Yeah. So first off, Kim is amazing, by the way. I know you're on this call, Kim. So I appreciate all the help and the guidance you guys gave me. The code enforcer was awesome. I know it was recommended to talk to him. I was grilling one day and kind of mentioned it to him, and I think he has a 3rd car garage too, so he understands the storage limitations. My wife's due with our 3rd kid on the 28th, so next Thursday. So truth be told, I haven't gone over with everything going on today. So
Okay.
Yeah, I told him obviously you guys got a letter. There's been a sign in my yard, so he's very aware of what I'm requesting. And he said he understood when I talked to him, but I didn't get like a letter or anything from him.
Okay, so why don't you make your presentation before we start getting into some questions?
Sure. I didn't prepare a presentation, so I apologize for that. But my job build, obviously, like I'm really just looking to add a third car garage. The only reason I'm requesting a variance, I think the plot's plenty large enough, but I really can't build on the far side due to that easement. So it just makes logical sense to build kind of where that third car driveway already exists. We have 3 cars. I just like to kind of keep it clean. Everybody else parks in the garage. I'd like to kind of get everything in the garage. I requested the 12-foot. The code enforcement officer told me that's kind of standard. I'm not a builder. I've had a couple builders come look and give me some quotes and some ideas. So I'm really trying to, I don't know, it's that chicken and egg conversation. I'm requesting a 12-foot by 30. I doubt it's going to be that big. One guy told me that based on the roof line, it would be more like 24 feet long. So it didn't impede with some of the windows. But I guess I'm just requesting something larger. So I feel like if I build something smaller, the board would be okay with that.
Yeah, I think it's not so much the depth is the problem. It's going to be the width. Is it for the side setback is the issue?
Okay.
Do you know the distance between your house and 1068 without the proposed garage and then with the proposed garage?
Yeah, so I use my survey map, that diagram that you just had up. I actually used my survey map to create that. So the house is built not exactly in line with the property line. So it's 21, yeah, there you go, 21.5 on the front of the house. And then it's 19.4 on the back end. We wouldn't be going all the way back. If you see my green line, it'd probably be 2/3 back. So it's probably 20 and a half, 21, something of that nature.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add to your application before we start asking you some questions?
I don't think so. I think I answered all the questions that were on the application. Some I'm not sure are applicable. I've also never done this before, so hopefully the board can give me some guidance. I'll answer whatever questions I'm equipped to answer without having any kind of engineer or contractor look at it at this point.
You're not the first newbie that we've talked to. So what we usually do is we're going to ask you some questions, and that'll help us fine tune the application to see what is it you're asking for and how it applies to the 5 criteria. Okay. So with that, Matt, do you have any questions?
Not really. This is relatively straightforward. Just a few things that come to mind. I'm assuming is there anything unique about this in that I'm assuming it's just going to match the siding color of the house and it's just going to kind of blend right in with the whole thing and kind of still fit within the character of the neighborhood?
Yeah. I mean, I've even talked to the contractor. The one guy wanted to do like a kind of a, I don't know, what do you call it? A gable style where it just kind of comes off the house. And I'm really trying to make it look like the neighborhood. Everybody else kind of has a north and south running steep. So my goal would make it look like everybody else's if I can.
Okay. And we did grant a variance for a couple doors down to have a third as well. Do we know, Al, is that project done?
Oh, last I knew, I don't think it even had started yet.
Oh, it started.
I may be incorrect, but
I live right
that's what I
here.
recall.
It's up. I mean, the structure is completely up. I don't know how finished it is.
Okay. Are there any other 3-car garages in the neighborhood?
I would say that the majority of them have 3 houses.
Okay.
I'm one of the few houses that doesn't at this point.
Okay. It would have been good if you had, the conversation with the neighbor, a little more thoroughly or direct. Obviously, to your point, he's aware something's going on. You had an initial conversation with him. It doesn't sound like or appear that he's, spoken one way or the other on it. But I think obviously this is something I could support given what's in front of us. So I'm out of questions for now.
Okay, Sarah, you have any questions?
I don't. I feel like this is right along the same lines as the area variance we granted last year in the same housing development. So I feel like it fits with the characteristic, and he's right along the same lines as they were. So I really don't have anything to negative or against the project at all. So I'm good with it presented.
Okay, Donna, questions?
None, I'm good as they are.
Okay, Fred, questions?
Where the new garage is gonna go is relatively flat. Probably slopes away from the house a little bit. But as the house goes out, that grade is gonna have to become steeper in order to keep a drain away from the house. And I kind of think that the neighbor ought to be in tune with that. And my thought is to make one of the conditions a letter from that neighbor that he doesn't object to it. Not so much that I don't believe the applicant, but I think it's important enough. That's all for me.
Fred, to your point, their house is probably 10 or 15 feet above ours.
Right.
I think even with the car garage, I think that it would still kind of slope down into our yard.
Right. You wouldn't want the grade sloping right down to the new garage. You would want a swale in between the two. That would make the grade a little steeper.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't go on his property, I wouldn't think, to regrade it. It would stay just on yours. But that's getting pretty close to an influence on the neighbor. That's my only thought is I'm nervous about the neighbor.
Okay. On the drainage swell issue, is there any encroachment or you anticipate any encroachment? Well, let me back up. Let me ask the question a little better. Is there a swale between your house and your neighbor at 1068?
I'm not sure the definition of a swale. I apologize.
Okay, so it's oftentimes in newer developments, what happens is in between the houses so that there isn't the runoff from one house to another, there is a depression in between the two houses that allow, I don't want to quite use the word flash flood, but if there is a kind of heavy rain, quick rain, that the water then will, instead of going into your neighbor's basement, will go into the depression and then off into a storm sewer or off into some other place that is someplace other than somebody's basement.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for the definition, Michael. I apologize for that. Like I just said to Fred, it actually all slopes. Like there's actually no grade that grades away from my house as is right now. Everything actually slopes down towards my house. Like I said, probably a 15-foot difference from like his ground level to my ground level, but there's no depression, no nothing. It's just kind of a smooth downgrade to my house itself, which was a little concerning when we bought the house because there is no slope away, Fred's point, at all. So I assume most of the water that runs from his yard is coming right down into my house today.
Well, let me ask Al then. Al, from the proposed plan for the garage, do you anticipate that there being any kind of adverse problems for the neighbor at 1068? Runoff, water runoff?
Excuse me, it's the neighbor to the south, I think, or
It'd be the uphill neighbor.
yeah, if he's uphill, should have enough room to drain water away from the garage as well as the neighbor's house without either one being inundated.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. All right, let's circle around to Fred's comment about looking for the neighbor's comments. My initial thought here is that they were put on notice. If the neighbor thought, whether it be for or against, that certainly neighbor had an opportunity to either send us an email or notify us that they were for or against it. Their silence doesn't actually mean that they're for or against it, but in my opinion, he had a comment, or they had an opportunity to comment, and they didn't do it. Matt, what do you think about requiring the neighbor to comment on this application?
I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I was going to ask Mr. Herman here. When are you looking at starting the project?
That's actually a great question. Also, spring, I think.
We got some time if we wanted to hear from that neighbor a little more directly. We're not going to really be impacting your project schedule.
You should be. I mean, I've met with one contractor so far because I wasn't exactly sure which step to put in front of the other step, right? I don't want to get a bunch of the contractors over here if the answer was going to be no, that I wasn't able to do the project at all. So,
do you would you have an issue with that? Is there a level of nervousness around being that direct with him or her, or?
Not, I don't have a problem communicating with the neighbors. It's been kind of a weird year just because of COVID. I was super close with my neighbors previous to this move. But I just feel awkward going over there at this point right now. Come springtime, I'm sure maybe it'll be a different story. But again, with my wife being so close to giving birth, I can't risk getting COVID myself.
Well, I mean, you could call them, right?
Yeah, I don't know their phone number though. Is that? I guess I could. Yeah, maybe I could reach out.
I mean, I could go either way with it, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, we mentioned it. We kind of talked. We talked during the time I was cooking chicken wings, so it's probably 20 minutes worth of a conversation, just kind of small talk. I brought it up right away because I don't know. I'm the new guy. I don't want to be the guy that's like making everybody upset the second I move here, right? Like, I'd like some good relationships with my neighbors. Again, the response I got was like, yeah, I totally understand. Like, as long as it looks good and fit the neighborhood, I don't have a problem with it. But that was kind of as far as it went from there.
Okay.
But there's been a sign in my yard for 2 weeks. So, and letters went out to all my neighbors. A couple of them messaged me and made some jokes about me being the new guy causing a ruckus, which was kind of funny.
Sarah, your thoughts on?
I don't think the letter is necessary. He's right. The sign's been in his front yard. A legal notice gets mailed to his house. You can't be much more proactive to get feedback. And if they haven't reached out with concern, then, I mean, I would like to say that there is no concern at this point. So my personal feeling is I don't think a letter is necessary.
Donna, your thoughts?
I want to ask Susie, is anybody watching, Susie?
There are people, but no comments for this application.
Okay. I'm with Sarah. I don't have a problem without having a letter from them. They had plenty of ways to do it if they wanted to.
Okay. Yeah, just to wrap that piece of it up, I think what we have is, since there was a variance granted in this neighborhood, it's not a large neighborhood. And also that there appears to be, when you look at the aerial, similar style, whether it be 3-car garages or additions to those homes, right? I think as far as that first criteria, I really don't think that an undesirable change is going to be produced in the character of the neighborhood. And just having one individual, we've had this before, where one neighbor might say, gee, I don't like it, and fill in the blank and try and explain why. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the variance is going to be denied. So with that, I'm comfortable with moving forward and going through the criteria. I think there's sufficient information that we can fill in the blanks, if you will, for the criteria and entertain a motion. Is Matt, you prepared then to, once we go through the criteria, you're comfortable with either granting or denying the motion with the information we have?
Yes, I'm comfortable.
Okay.
No issues on my end.
All right, Sarah, you comfortable
Hey,
moving
Mike.
forward?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Al, you got a comment?
Yeah, I did some math on the plan that was submitted and interpolated the numbers, and it comes out that the back corner of the garage, if it were 30 feet, would be actually, with the eave, would be 7 feet from the lot line rather than the 8 indicated.
All right, so the depth is going to matter. So what he's asking for an 8-foot side setback, and you're looking at the plan numbers. It looks like you need 7.
Yes, that would be at the back corner.
Okay.
That's if he goes with a 30-foot depth.
Correct.
So, Al, does 30 foot get me all the way back there? I tried to measure I have a bump out associated with a fireplace. That's got to,
Mhm.
gosh, that's got to be, I don't know, 15, 20 feet, I would think, up from the back of my house. So I wasn't going to do that. But
yeah,
I can just,
That's probably right. But what I did is I took the difference from the front of the house to the back of the house and spread that over the 46 feet, which is the length of the house. And then you interpolate to the 30, actually it ends up 31 and a half feet because you're setting the garage back 1.5 feet from the front.
Yep.
And then from there, it comes out that it's 30 feet, or excuse me, at 30, actually at 31 and a half feet back from the front of the house, and the garage being 12 feet plus the eave, you end up at 7 feet.
I trust Al's math. I apologize. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not good at this stuff.
It's okay.
Probably right.
That's why I'm here.
Oh, this is important because what for both applicants, the variance, if granted, runs the land. So whatever is decided is going to stay with it, whether you're the homeowner or not. If you sell it, the variance stays. And also in today's day and age, as much as people might want to say, well, close enough is good enough, applications, especially variances, could run into some trouble if you basically put your thumb up and say, oh, I want it over there. Because if it's an 8-foot request and the variance is granted in 8 feet and it turns out to be 7.5 or 7, you got yourself a bind and now you're in violation. So I think what Al's trying to do is give you a little bit more room for error so that if it turns out to be 8, okay. If it's 7, now you got a little bit more room to get it done, presuming that the board decides to grant the variance. Does that make sense?
I appreciate you, Al. I truly do. Again, I'm freestyling here. I'm not a contractor, so thank you, Al, for doing that math. Yeah.
Any of the comments, Al?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, great. All right. So let's run through the criteria. First being an undesirable change would not be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties created by granting of the area variance. Justification being that the placement for the garage is going to be attached to the garage. There's really, to put it on the other side of the house is going to encroach onto the easement. Also, that there are other similar type of garages, third bay or three-car garages in the neighborhood. We have found that there was one similar request for a variance back in July of 2020 that was granted. While the applicant hasn't directly spoken, or at least doesn't have any proof that he spoke to the neighbor at 1068, it appears that the notice was given to that neighbor and the neighbor has not either spoke for or against the requested variance. Anyone else want to add to the first criteria?
No.
Okay. Second being the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. As part of the first justification, was that there is an easement on the other side of the house, which makes it prohibitive. Anyone want to add anything else to the second criteria?
No.
All right. Third, the requested area variance. I would have to say that it is substantial. It is more than 50%. Anyone want to comment or add anything on the third criteria? Fourth, the proposed variance will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical and environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. It appears that the drainage and swale, water, if you will, encroachment has been addressed. Al seemed to indicate that there would not be any kind of runoff or water issue, and I think that's satisfactory. Anyone want to add anything else to the fourth criteria? Fifth, the alleged difficulty is self-created. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that the application will be denied based solely on the difficulty is self-created. There was some discussion on whether or not we should require the neighbor at 1068 to comment on at least having an opportunity for for or against. However, I think that it is at this point unnecessary. Would anyone like to add anything else to the 5 criteria or any proposed conditions to the variance itself? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
A
I'll make-
motion for approval.
Thank you, Matt. Sarah, would you like to second
All right,
that?
Sarah.
That's okay. Yeah, I'll second, Mike.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further discussion on the proposed motion? Great, then, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right. You have a variance. Congratulations. Good luck to you. Stay well.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the help.
You're very welcome. Okay, next, the Crisano application. Am I pronouncing that right?
Definitely not.
It's all right.
Really?
Canzano.
Canzano.
Kenzano. How did I put an R in there. I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Let me try again. Kenzano.
There you go.
Thank you.
My mother would be so disappointed in me. Okay, so you know the drill.
Yep.
We're going to give you an opportunity to make your presentation. Looks like this is going to be a proposed new build. You're currently looking to build a house at 1068 Strong Road, and there currently is a barn, an existing barn on the property. Is that right?
That's correct. So right now we actually do not own the property yet. We've placed an offer on it. We're under contract. It's right now, we just had the seller had a planning board meeting last week for the subdivision of the land. It's a larger parcel of land on Strong Road. So we kind of understand this is sort of like a chicken before the egg thing, but there's a lot of pieces that go into it, and we don't want to purchase 8.5 acres of land without either having had a conversation with you, with the understanding that we could build on it in the future, because the last thing we want is to spend all this money and then own a big barn. So, so right now there is a barn right up against the road, and yep, you can see my nice little drawing there, and the other one points to the barn. And so that would be our lot that we're going to be purchasing. And then the possible home site would be behind it. Obviously, there isn't space for a home in front of it. The plan would be to build a modern farmhouse there for our family. And we would fix up the barn. Right now, it's super run down. It's like red and white. We'd fix that up. There would be landscaping. You know, it would be our home, our like forever home. So the issue being that we'd have to build behind the barn, which the variance is for. The other problem is though, is that we don't know exactly where the house is going to go until we purchase the land, we figure out where the well would go, the septic and all that, but that's the general placement of where we would like the home. I know that was a lot of information.
No, that was very brief and concise. Nice, very nice job. Anything else you want to add before we ask you some questions?
I guess good information to have would be that the lot above us, the lot 2 there, is actually our best friends that are going to be purchasing that lot. So we know who's going in next to us. And right now the land is all owned by like a family trust. So the piece across Strong Road, the large 34-acre parcel, there's not, I don't think, a buyer on it right now. It's still that family trust that would own it. So we're just purchasing those 2 lots there.
I might have missed it. Do you have authorization to apply for the variance?
We do in
Yes.
the offer of in the contract that we're under for the
Okay.
land.
And
Wow.
we got the survey information from the seller's survey company. That was their survey that they did.
Okay. Sarah, do you have any questions?
I guess my question right now is, how far is the barn currently from the road, and proposed location from the barn to the house? That's my question for now.
That's a good question.
I don't know if
I don't
have
think that it's on the
information.
survey, how far it is. Can you guess it?
No.
To at least
No,
give
we
it-
don't want to guess.
I know,
No
just like
guessing.
as an idea though, like it's hard to tell on that picture.
Well, was there ever an application to build a barn on the land? Is there any historical information from the town that has that data on it?
There may be. I remember when I looked at this for the planning board for the subdivision,
Yeah.
I know the barn was at least 40 feet from the right-of-way line. I want to say it was maybe 50 feet from the right-of-way line.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then do you have an idea how far you'd like to put the house from the barn?
So if the barn, I would say double that at least.
Yeah, I think further than that, I think there were some, so we've done some preliminary work in trying to understand what our options are in building, especially knowing that we have to install a septic system and do well, that we can only be so far off the road without having to install some type of sprinkler system. So we would obviously look to, to construct a home within those parameters while still
Which I believe is 250 feet
Yeah,
back from
the road. So, we're trying to take it off the road, leverage some of the property, and again, it's only going to be a single family home on that entire 8.5 acres. So we would have the ability to move it. I guess ultimately we're just looking to know that we would be able to do that before we spend all this money.
Are you looking to get a number from us or in a variance tonight? Or are you looking for opinions and guidance?
I guess either, because right now the situation, there's so many like moving parts that are involved. So I guess if we were to come to this with you, like the questions you're asking, we need to know, obviously. So that's something we can go back and find out more information from, whether it's through Al or someone at the town, to get all that information, because this is a learning process for us. And it's been, 6 months of questions and meetings, and poor Kim, as we've talked to Kim 1,001 times. And the sellers don't have a lot of information on the land because it wasn't theirs. It was relatives that owned it. So,
I mean, I guess ultimately having the variance would provide a ton of peace of mind. But if not, we at least need to understand the fact that it wouldn't be an issue to obtain the variance, knowing that there is that existing barn and structure there, given the fact that we would work with the town once we go for a site plan to ultimately construct the home.
Matt, do you have some more questions?
If it's my turn, I didn't want to hijack. Who was going before me? Sarah?
Just one more question.
Yeah.
Is the driveway in where it is in its current location, your plan to leave it in that spot?
probably,
Partially.
yes, it would probably come off that one spot so it could loop into the barn and then loop straight back to the house.
Okay, those are the questions I had for now. So Matt, your turn.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. I mean, my opinion on this, and we've seen this a few times, right? The lots that have, pre-existing barns and things on them, and it's not uncommon in a country setting like this to have the barn forward of the front line of the house. As long as in my opinion, solely in my opinion, as long as the home is, adequately spaced from the road, it looks like you want to set it back there quite a distance. I'm okay with having the barn forward of the house in a setting in a neighborhood like this. It makes sense to me. That's what I would want to do with it. I think it would be within character of the neighborhood. And so I guess maybe my question to Al is how close to the road is the house allowed to be?
This front setback to the right-of-way line is 40 feet.
And the right-of-way line is that dotted line?
I don't have it in front of me, but generally, yes.
On the road, I'm looking at the
Survey map.
Strong Road map. There's a red dotted line that goes east-west, or maybe that's north-south. North-south.
Yeah, north-south.
I believe so.
I'm of a.
That's the.
I would. It's tough to give we all give our opinions,
Right.
but
I
none of them are
completely
guarantees
understand
or
that.
promises, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking if we either just, if it's possible, and I'll leave it up to Mike and the rest of the board to just draw the line, or give you something that we know there's enough buffer for you to work with,
Okay.
or anyone who's going to buy the property to work with, and still have the home, no closer than
Right.
X number
Right.
of feet from the existing barn. So I'll turn over to the rest of the board, but I'm totally willing to kind of work with you and the rest of the board in those regards to come up with a solid number and
Yeah.
guidance for
That would be
you,
great.
instead of a kind of a wishy-washy, hey, we think everybody liked it kind of thing.
Thank you. That's a good recommendation.
Al, I'd like to have you comment a little more on your notes about lots 2 and 3 are not buildable until the site plan has been submitted and approved. Which stage are we in that?
Right now, they're in the subdivision stage, so they're breaking the parent parcel out into 3, one being on the west side of the road and Canzanos, and the neighboring parcel to the north being on the east side of the road. If and when that is approved, they could then move forward with establishing a site plan, which they would get a design professional, and they can submit that through the planning building office or through the planning board or to the town engineer for review. Once that's reviewed and approved, then they can move forward with building permits.
All right. I'm a little leery of pressing forward with the variance at this stage without having some kind of comfort level on the site plan approval process. Because I don't know, and I understand the chicken and the egg argument here and the problem. But if a variance is granted and we're starting to guess about, well, gee, you can have the house here and there and it makes some sense. And then in the site plan approval process, there's just all this upheaval or contradictions about, no, you can't really put the house there because something that's really in the purview of in the site plan approval process. Well, let me again go back to Al a little bit here on in the site plan approval process. Is there any kind of thought process on where possible locations for a residential structure can go, irrespective of the barn?
That's part of the site plan process, and they have to show where the house is going to be located, along with septic, driveways, and utilities, and as well as grading.
So is it possible, without micromanaging or telling the planning board or the site plan approval process what to do, is it possible for the code, from the code, to, I'm not saying that that's where you want to put the house, but is it possible to put the house right next to the barn so that a variance wouldn't be required. Saying that this comes down to the feasibility piece of it.
Right. I mean, I think looking at it, you can't put the house in front of the barn, right? Without,
Or
Not-
I
No,
mean,
no, no,
I
next
mean,
to
I
it.
feel like even next
Next
to
to
it,
it.
it's too close to the road.
You
isn't it?
could you could put it, locate it somewhere to the side of the barn, but still have the front line of the house closer to the road than the barn is.
All right, I know that's not what you want. It's really not really the question I'm trying to drive at, is
Mhm.
that it does go to the, one of the criteria as far as, is it feasible, or it's the reverse, that there really isn't any other feasible alternatives for you to accomplish what you want without the variance. So if in the site plan approval process, if in their wisdom, in their analysis, they say, "Well, you, if you wanted to, whoever owns that property could put a house in line with where the barn is and still be in compliance with the code and not require a variance." That's a factor we have to consider, right? And to do an analysis of a variance at this point without knowing what the site plan approval process looks like, I think is
Mhm.
premature, because there's pieces that we don't know.
Right.
And we don't start guessing at to say, well, is it feasible or not? Well, we don't know because the site plan approval process hasn't been completed yet. So I
Mhm.
think that's an important piece that we're not quite ready to do a full analysis on either granting or denying it. Does it make any sense, or I can explain it a little differently?
I guess
No, yeah, I understand.
I guess I'm struggling with that because the site plan approval, who determines that? I mean, we hire somebody to develop the land, to give us a
Goes to the
plan,
board.
and we present it to the board of where we are looking to construct a home. And then you're outlining that the board would come back and say, no, you actually could move it up 200 feet right next to the barn and accomplish what you're looking for.
Generally, what would happen is you would hire a design professional to design your site, and in that they would take into your considerations where you would like to place a house,
Yep.
as well as keeping in mind town codes, as far as setbacks to front and sides and other buildings. At that point, that site plan would come forward. It would be submitted. It would be then reviewed by myself or somebody else in the code office. And if it didn't meet code for setbacks, or in this case being being behind the front line of the barn, that would be highlighted, and then you'd have to come back, get the variance prior to the planning board or anybody else approving the site plan.
Thank you, Al. I think what's also important here, and to the applicant's favor, is that, as Al indicated in his notes, that the barn is a previous existing non-conforming, which even though what you're trying to do, many times if an applicant comes before us with this kind of request, the house has already been constructed. They want to put the barn in front of the house.
Mhm.
You're doing it the other way. The barn is already there, and it's, let me ask you this. It's a curious question that I have. Is there any thought about taking the barn down? And if so, you want to keep the barn?
So we want to
Okay.
keep the barn. It would serve, great storage. We would look to improve the barn. It's on a cement slab. I think it would be,
Nice.
it wouldn't make sense for us to take it down, relocate, or even take it off the property.
Okay, so this
It's
now goes,
valuable to the piece of land that we're looking to purchase.
all right, so this would help. And I think where we're going with it is, we're going to need some more information.
Mhm.
And on the feasibility piece, if you could come back and say, look, to move the barn we looked into it, it's going to cost, if you have somebody give you an estimate to say, it's going to cost us $100,000 to move the barn. It's
Build a
going to
new one.
cost us $100,000 to take the barn. I'm just putting a number on it.
Right.
So that is valuable to us, because now we're going to see, it's like, okay, it isn't feasible to move the barn. It's not, they don't want to take the barn down. And even though it's the needs and wants, we had this conversation with applicants before,
Sure.
you may not want the house next to or in line with the barn because of aesthetics. Okay, that's important. Doesn't mean though you can't put it in some other place. These are all valuable pieces when we look at the criteria and plug all this information in. I think you saw in the last application that just because you don't meet one of the criteria is not fatal to the granting of the variance itself. You don't need all of them. It's a collective body of information, the factors that go into it.
Okay.
Okay.
So my question would be then, just guidance from you, the next step for us. So say we purchase the land and everything goes through successfully with the subdivision, we're able to purchase the land. Your recommendation would be then, when we're working with our builder or developer, whoever, to do the site plan first and then get the variance? Or to get the variance and then the site plan?
I don't know if it was just my computer, but I think I missed about 2 sentences of what you said. You had a skip and I missed it. So if you could say that again for me.
No worries. So my question is, if the subdivision goes through successfully and we're able to purchase the land, is the next step then the site plan application and then the variance?
All
Or
right.
vice versa?
Well,
Actually,
go ahead.
you can submit the site plan, but it cannot be approved until you get the variance.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Now I'm confused because everything was contingent upon the site plan, yet we can't even go to site plan submission until we know that we can.
We can, it won't get approved until
Yeah,
it's like
I
in
guess.
the middle.
You can generate the site plan, and submit it, but it cannot be approved by myself, the town engineer, or the planning board until all variances are satisfied.
So
it sounds
what
like we
have-
can try to figure out what we need to do to satisfy the variance.
All right. The problem.
I've never been through this. I'm just trying
Okay.
to
No,
process it in my head.
No worries. That's why.
Oh, good.
I have to help him process
Yeah,
every day.
a lot of times she does. It's all right.
Okay.
We'll get through this.
Struggle is real.
So, I'll get to you in a sec on it.
Okay.
So for me, not knowing where that house is going to go, just by you saying it's going to go about there,
Right.
is causing, I think, me some angst, and maybe some of the board members some angst. And I think Al's trying to tell you is you got to kind of put a fence around your project instead of just having this wide open of, well, it might go here, it might go there, it might go here. I think that process needs to get going on where you'd like the house to go, what it's going to look like for the site plan approval process.
Okay.
Okay. Donna, you have a question?
Yes. Is the property that they're buying where the old Ontario pool supply was?
Yes.
That's the building.
Okay, is there already a variance on that property for that business and building there, or no? Or was it just a barn?
If I understood Al's notes right, this was granted by a special use permit and has not been renewed. So
Okay, that's, okay,
the business is not running out of there anymore.
Right.
okay,
Is that accurate, Al?
That's correct.
okay. So then that property is zoned what?
Residential
R2.
2.
That's what we understood. R2
Okay.
residential.
That's correct.
R2. Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. No,
Al, does
that
this
was
come
my
in the
only
ag
question.
district at all?
Again,
There's been times when applicants come forward with variances and, if you will, the bar is lowered because they're in an ag district.
I think that's only if it's a farming activity though, right?
right,
If it's a,
correct.
Mhm.
Right, they'd have to use, if it was an ag district area, they would have to use that barn for agricultural purposes. But I'm
Correct.
not hearing that that's what you're gonna do.
I do want some goats, guys.
there may be some additions.
Oh, okay, all right, we'll
Chickens or
hold that
something.
thought for now.
yeah.
All right, Donna, any other questions?
No, thank you.
Fred, questions?
I don't see the problem with the house. If the question in front of us is, can they build a house behind the barn? And we say yes or no. Let's say we say yes. as long as the house is built per code, what's the problem?
Wow, I agree 100% with you, Fred.
Me too, Fred.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah, what do you think?
I think that no one will agree with me because I think we're too early to decide this right now. I think the subdivision isn't even done yet, so, and we don't even have a guesstimate of what a site plan will look like. I mean, I guess this is a guesstimate of a site plan.
Yeah.
I think that until we actually see an actual site plan, I think then we could better make our decision. That's just,
I'm kind of in this, well, it's more similar boat as Fred, but in my opinion, this is all about the character of the neighborhood, right? We're not in a Ryan home development or anything like that where houses are close to each other. And it's all about, do we feel comfortable with having the barn in front of the house? I could honestly care where they put that house on that piece of property, as long as it adheres to the side setbacks and the rest of the code. And the only variance between them and getting the house where they want is just the placement of the barn forward of the house. No problem here. And they're obeying all of the side setbacks and all the other, things where the septic has to be so far and they've got a well thought out plan. I'm not sure we can make that decision for you tonight, other than, again, kind of giving you some feedback. But as long as they're obeying all, whether the lot line is 5 feet this way or that way, or whether it looks exactly like this, I just think in general, my opinion is I'm okay with having the barn forward of the house. Again, as long as the house meets all of the other code criteria. Put it wherever you want.
Okay. All right, don't want to cut anybody else off. Fred, Don, anyone else want to have any comments on the issue?
If we were to force this barn to be torn down, I'd feel guilty and wouldn't want to drive down Strong Road anymore.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think it's a question that we can't assume things. To create a record is important. So to hear the applicant say that they want to keep the barn, I know it was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek question. It's like, I get it. To move the barn, to tear it down, that's not feasible, but we can't assume it. So it has to be somebody has to say and make that part of the record.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is the normal variance approval process for this request to construct something behind an existing barn, does it require your review of the site plan? Everybody's asking for that, but it sounds like all we're looking for, and like you said, is just a yes or no.
None of our business.
The variance has to be specific in that it will.
Oh, okay.
So you're only allowed to be so far away from the barn. You're like, you have to basically tell us exactly where the house is going to go.
Okay, so there is in the variance, it needs to be 70 feet away from.
Right, no closer than X.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Let me put it even a little different. The site plan approval process is important, where other applications, I can't tell you exactly where they've been, but to describe them, the barn itself was, for example, about 200 feet off the road, and the house was further back, and you never would see it, and it was well buffered. And so that's just an example of when a house could be behind a barn or an exterior, a non-livable structure, if you will. So every case is different. We go on a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
Your case is unique. The house, the barn exists, and it's about 50 feet off the road. You have lots of room in the back. If you will, troubling, maybe intriguing part of this application is there's lots of different places you can put the house, including next to the barn. Again, I know you don't want it there. I hear you, but for us to look at it and say, well, they didn't want it there, so let them put it wherever they want. The way that the code is, the way variances work, you need more than that just to say we don't want it there. We have had applicants say, well, we can't put the barn, structure, garage there because we only could put the septic system in this location. And this is about the only place that makes sense because of the slope and all these other variables come into play. And we look at it and say, okay, now this makes sense. There's really not a feasible place to put X and they need the variance. You have a lot of, what was it? You say 80 acres, 8 acres.
8.5, yeah.
Okay, 8.5 acres. I don't think you could put the house anywhere on the 8 acres, but I'm going to take a guess. It's probably close to 7 acres
Yeah.
that you could put that house.
Yeah.
Right. So to Matt's point, to say, yeah, you can put it wherever you want, but for the variance, it's important that it's written so that we know, and the language of the variance is that where is that house going to be in location of the barn? And I don't know if you're quite there yet.
No. And I think though, like all the questions you guys have asked have helped
helped
us
us.
like narrow down and get a feel for, you know, your opinions on it, what's required for it, the process. Like it's just been very confusing. So I think this was like the first place we could start right now. And I think this has been helpful for me at least to understand and to know what we need moving forward. So.
No, and there have been other applicants that when something is unusual and a variance is needed, they'll say, well, gee, on that, it's the first criteria about changing the character of the neighborhood or whether or not we change the character of the neighborhood. They'll go in the neighborhood, and I think you heard in the last application, say, well, there's 3-car garages in our neighborhood. It's not going to change the character of the neighborhood. You might do a little more research and say, yeah, there are barns out there.
There is one.
There is one down the
Number
street.
1200 Strong Road.
1200 Strong Road.
It exists today.
And there we go. So showing that and presenting that to the board, you can't make the board, the zoning board, do all your homework for you. And it's your application. You have to give us something to sink our teeth into so that we can say, oh, okay, yeah, there is another barn there. It's not going to change the character of the neighborhood without creating with the dangerous language that the board or the granting or denial of variance is this. It's a term called arbitrary and capricious, meaning the decision which is made without any thought going into it.
Mhm.
All right, facts need to be put into it so that the reason why the variance was granted or denied was based on facts. All right, to make some sense. So we need some facts, more facts, if you want the variance to be granted that plug into the criteria.
Mike, are you suggesting that this application be tabled at this meeting and then?
I think that's right. I think that's where we need to go. We don't have enough information just yet. So what I want to do though is we do have an email. Just give me a second. I gotta get a little drink.
You're fine.
Mike,
Yes.
there is one comment, so whenever you're ready for that.
Well, I know we had an email from Philip Nelson. Is that the comments you're speaking of or somebody else?
Nope, it's another resident.
Okay, so I would like to at least touch on we have an email from Philip Nelson. He brought up 3 concerns regarding the subdivision. The first being that the barn housed a pool supply business. I think that has already been addressed, so we can take that off. He indicated that Strong Road, south of there's a blind curve on Strong Road. I don't think that comes under the purview of the zoning board. While it might be a concern, I think that's more of a highway department concern, and I don't think necessarily going to change the character of the neighborhood. So certainly if the board wants to discuss that, I certainly can, but I don't think
that was brought up on the planning board for the subdivision.
Yeah,
So
I don't think
they're requiring them to propose driveways further so that they can see how that would impact that turn.
okay. And the next, he discussed the deer population. I'm not sure that I've ever heard that concern before as far as variance criteria. he
We'll
seemed to
let him be.
indicate
We're not gonna bother him.
What was the, what was it?
The
there
deer.
was a concern that it would impact the deer population and that there would be more deer car collisions.
We've had very little influence on the deer habits.
So I don't think that, I do appreciate public comment, but I don't think those concerns that he has are pointed enough to either sway the board one way or the other as far as the granting or denying of the variance itself. So Susie, you said you had other comments from the public?
Yes, I have a couple comments by the same resident, a John Aldrich at 8018 Taylor Road. The first one, he says he's in complete support of the proposal to build a house behind the existing barn. It is a large lot and would not be a detriment to the neighborhood in any way. And then he continued on with saying there was another variance was given to an Ed Hackle on Taylor Road to build a garage in front of his house a few years ago, and it looks great. And that's it.
Al, do you know about that variance?
Say again, please.
The variance for Ed Hackle,
Yes,
when?
there was, yes, that was granted, I believe.
Right, but do you know when?
Oh, maybe 4 years ago.
About 4 years ago, okay. All right, so I think since we are at least moving in the direction of tabling it, Kim, could I give you some homework and look for that variance and then, and the minutes as well, and pass that along to the board members?
Yep, I can do that.
Great, because I think that would assist us in understanding whether or not there would be changes, undesirable changes to the neighborhood. Susie, anyone else?
Yes, I have one other one by a Dolores Fanton at
May have
8082
lost the applicant, or no?
Taylor
Oh, that's
Road.
right. It just moved on my screen.
Oh, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Dolores Fanton, 8082 Taylor Road, and she says she agrees with the house behind the barn. She's concerned about the house being built north of the barn and danger of a blind drive.
That would be right on the lot line, so. I see what you're saying. Oh, that would be lot
Okay,
two.
so it
That would
sounds
be
like,
the
we-
other lot.
all right, so Susie, it sounds like we have three individuals from the public for the application?
Just two.
Two, okay. Oh, I see. John was, all right, I got it. I know what happened.
It's 2-1.
John Eldridge was referring to an application of Ed Hackle.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, so there were two. So we have 2, 4, and 1 against. All right. So, Matt, are you okay then with tabling this? And I think the applicants have some better knowledge and maybe what their homework is for us.
Yeah,
Instead of making it-
I'm okay with it. My comment or advice to the applicant is put your site plan together the way you want it to look, and then provide just the supporting facts and evidence that support where you want the house to go. And I think you'll do well.
Maybe refer to it as a sketch plan, not a site plan.
Well, they've got to have a site
Until a
plan.
variance- until a variance-
Yeah, I think we need a site plan because we need to know septic and well, like there's requirements because there's no public water and sewer. How long would the application, how long can it be tabled for?
Well, let me ask you, how long is it going to take you to put that plan together?
I guess we don't know yet.
Right, we don't own the land yet, so.
Part one is we need to purchase the land, which again is part of the request. And in our contract and purchasing the land, we put a contingency that we would be able to obtain variance to construct a home behind the existing barn.
that we'd be able to apply for one.
apply for one.
Generally,
It
sorry, application can stay open or goes for 62 days unless the zoning board and the applicant agree to go longer.
Okay.
I think considering what we're hearing and seeing, I can circle around with the board, but if you do need more than 62 days, I'm guessing the board is going to give you that kind of latitude. But hopefully you're not going to need all that time. You should be able to get some information for us, where you'd like to see the house, and also, well, I think you said that barn. Was that the variant? Is that the Hankel property, or is it another property?
1,200 strong. It's in our
Our letter.
letter to you that exists today on Strong Road, just a few houses down.
A few houses south of where the land is. It's like a real dark blue color, and the house, the barn is super close to the road, and then the barn or the house is back further.
And I guess the reason I'm asking is one, we don't own the land yet, and two, there's financial obligation we'd have to do all of that we're not going to look to incur until we know that we can even do it on the land. So if we can't get the subdivision approved and processed and closing on the home, we need to know that it's our piece of property before we start paying
Right,
contractors
before we do a
and developers and everybody to do all of that work.
So that just depends
So
on
that's why I asked how long the application could be.
Having the location of where you'd like the house, I think is going to be important. How long do you think that's going to take?
That's the problem is it just depends on, we've been trying to buy this land since like July. So it's been a little bit of a process, and it's not moving slow on our account. So we'll leave it at that.
We have a general idea. I mean, we know
Right.
where we want it to be, but
It just depends on,
can it work with the septic and the well,
Right.
and like all of that plays into it.
right, we have to get like the well test done and the perk
Perk
test
test.
done, and we don't necessarily, we can't do that until we're like that's why all these parts are kind of reliant on the next part.
Yeah, I know, I hear you. I'm trying to figure out then what's,
No, I mean, we
What's
really
the best
appreciate, like, I feel
This
like
is
we've
great,
learned a
yeah.
lot, and we hope we didn't waste your time by bringing
No,
something that
not at
couldn't be
all.
acted on right away.
Al, do you have any thoughts, comments?
I didn't know if the board was interested, and I was wondering if you could approve a variance contingent on them coming back with a site plan. Kind of defeats what you're trying to do right now, though.
Right. Because without knowing, and I think it does matter on where the proposed house is going to go. And all that I'm hearing so far from the applicant is that they don't want it next to or in line with the barn. But what's troubling to me as a board member is that there's 7 acres that you can put it anywhere in. I understand where the barn is, and it's the needs and wants, and that's the hurdle I'm really trying to get around.
Part of it, Mike, is if there were no barn, they could put the house wherever they want within the setbacks, right? I mean,
Now you're playing
Our
this,
opinion
but
wouldn't
it
matter.
does matter that there's a barn there.
Right.
If the barn wasn't there,
it
you're
does
right.
now. What I'm saying though is, if
the
there
barn
wasn't a barn, they could put it wherever. I mean, that fact, I guess, helps me with my decision on this, and that
Right, and I think the purpose of
is
the code,
if I'm okay with the barn being forward of the front line of the house, then the barn could be forward of the front line of the house, right?
I
Put it wherever you
I
want.
think the analysis would be different if this were closer to, let's say, the village or something it's a cluster development.
Yeah.
I don't think that the variance would be granted. The reason why it's being considered is because it's further out. It's either was farmland, it's rural. So I think that gives it more weight
Right.
to allowing the house to be behind the structure, behind
Right.
the barn.
The
So-
character of the neighborhood. Yeah.
Right. So does it matter that if the house is 5 feet behind the barn or 500 feet behind the barn? I don't think it's going to change the character of the neighborhood.
Right. Then that's my point. That's
Being
exactly
able
my
to-
point.
Well, Matt, do you think there's enough information today that we can run this through the criteria and, in your mind, grant the variance?
In my opinion, yes.
All right.
And
Fred?
and again, it's based on what I said earlier, which is I'm applying more weight to the criteria associated with the characteristic of the neighborhood, because that's largely what this part of the code is about. Things being forward of the house structure. If this was in the village or another, absolutely right. I would still weight that heavily, but I wouldn't be in favor of it if this was an Orion development or another development, again, with a row of homes and someone wanted to put a shed in their front yard. It's different.
Right.
So in my,
We are village residents today. We live in the village of Victor today.
And our sheds in the
And our shed's in
backyard.
the back.
I'm not, so to me, I do feel comfortable. I think again, with all of the other assumptions that the applicant is going to follow the rest of the code, we're not giving them, an appraisal on a reprieve on putting the septic wherever you want or being as close to they still have to follow all the setback rules and everything else. They're literally here for that one variance. And I think the best way to communicate that is either going to have to be, we draw a line on this it says, we're okay with the home being, no closer than or no further than X number of feet.
That's the case, aren't we? We try and steer away from micromanaging.
Yeah, exactly. It would have to be a number that everybody feels like, oh yeah, of course we're going to be, whether it's a foot behind you draw the line a foot behind the barn and say you can be no forward of that. I whatever that is, and I'm just kind of freewheeling it here, but I think we would, if we put our heads together, we could come up with a reasonable number. I think another way too may also be, I think other times we have, as a board, voted on maybe a statement or a recommendation. It's short of a variance, but it would be a communication that said, our opinion on this is X.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that, and I liking the thought that you have. The other piece that I think is going to be helpful for the board is taking a look at the variance that was granted, I think Al indicated about 4 years ago, looking at the minutes and looking at how this board arrived at granting that variance. But globally, it feels like, without pinning it down specifically, say, yeah, you will get the variance granted. I think the applicant should have a pretty good feel for, if the site plan approval was ready to go, done, and the house was placed and the septic system made sense to where it was going to go because it was based on the site plan approval process, I think this board is more likely than not going to grant the variance. The concern that I have is there's just some unknowns that I just don't feel comfortable on guessing at what these criteria pieces are.
What's a good example of an unknown?
Where's the house going to go? And where, it's the rationale of, is it going to change the character of the neighborhood? If you arguably, I don't know this, but if this during the site plan approval process, if again it's considered that the house goes next to the barn, and Al or the septic system, it won't fit. It won't go there. It can't go there. Okay, that's valuable information. So that's not feasible to put it next to the house or next to the barn anymore. It has to go behind the barn. The only way for a resident to go there is for it to be behind the barn, because the septic system won't fit, or it can't go there. I'm guessing it. I'm making things up here. Is it going to change the character of the neighborhood if that house is directly behind the barn within 5 feet? Sure, probably. I think that's going to be ugly, and so right. But I shouldn't be micromanaging where the applicant wants to put the house, and where's the septic system going to go. And I would like to see what the how that variance was granted for the Henkel property.
Okay.
And I think by getting our arms around that, Ken, when's our next meeting?
Table this. We can't go over it that's about the third time we've gone over it. Take it up again.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
If we were to grant a variance, it always goes with that property. What happens if they don't get the subdivision?
My opinion would be that it would go away.
It would go
Just
away.
because there no longer would be a property that it's associated with.
Well, there could be a condition. I think if the variance is granted, a condition to site plan approval.
Okay,
But I think it's a good question. I think that's an easy fix.
okay, thank you.
The next meeting is February 1st.
There's also one more comment.
Okay.
It was from Philip Nelson. I guess he was clarifying his comments. He said they were not specifically for a variance for one house, but for the several subdivisions and quantity of houses that will be built on Strong Road's multiple subdivisions. And he has no objection to putting a house behind the barn.
Okay.
Well, what do you know?
Fred, is that a little sarcastic?
That's 3 neighbors for, and an existing example or 2 nearby. That's better than most applications.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So let me, I'd like to see that Henkel application, the variance, the minutes. So I think that could be valuable information. You okay with that, Matt, if we table it until February 1st?
I think the applicant's got the time, it sounds like, too. And, you don't need us to necessarily decide the second. This is a good debate, and I can't resist a good debate on things. But I generally try to, put as little red tape in between us, the decision, and the applicant as possible. But it sounds like you're not here chomping at the bit saying, I've got to have this decision by. You've probably got a pretty good feeling, like Mike said, on where we're going to end up with this.
Yeah.
Is that good enough for you to make your next steps in your home purchase process?
It is, and thank you guys so much. The next subdivision meeting is the 26th. So there's another, we had a first meeting, they have questions about a few other things. So that's fine. If you guys need to review that, completely understand. Glad to see what other precedent was set. And if, it helps making the decision easier, that's great.
Al, are you part of that meeting on the 26th?
Nope. I provided comment to it, but that's it.
All right. I think if we could get minutes to those, to that meeting by the 1st, so we can take a look at both the variance on the Henkel property and the minutes for the subdivision. I think that would give us, again, valuable information so that hopefully then we can address this particular application. Can we do that, Kim?
Well, Lisa types those minutes, so I will ask her. We'll see what she can do on that, but the hackle, I can definitely get that for you.
Awesome. Yep. I appreciate whatever you can do on that.
Okay.
So, and again, thank you. The whole purpose too is, and I think you heard again from the other application, is that to create a thorough record, we don't want to make an arbitrary and capricious decision one way or the other. And I think to Matt's point, what he calls, it's a good debate. We're creating a good record here. The analysis is important so that if anybody decides that they want to challenge this particular, whether it's granted or denied, they want to challenge it, they can go back into the minutes and they should be able to tell that we, 45 minutes, 50 minutes on this. And I think anybody would be hard pressed to say that a decision on this particular application was arbitrary and capricious. Okay.
Sounds
have any
good.
que-
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions for us?
No, this was super
Yeah,
informative and we
this
just
was great.
appreciate your time. We know, I'm sure you're all super busy on a Tuesday night during COVID, so thank you.
Hey, the Sabres are on, so
Oh, there you go. There you go.
it's okay. This is more important. Does anyone else have any other questions before we let them go?
I'm good.
We're all good? Fred, Donna, Sarah?
I'm good.
Okay, good. Susie, anyone else? Any other comments?
No other comments.
Okay, good. All right, so we're going to circle back on February 1st. Kim's going to get us that other variance that was granted and hopefully get the minutes from the site plan. And we'll see what we can do for you on the 1st.
And you'll send us the information to join again on the 1st?
Who does? Kim, is that you that did that or?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, Susie will send it to me and I'll send it to you.
awesome.
Thanks,
Very
Kim.
Sure.
That
good. Okay,
works.
we're all set?
Thanks,
Yes,
guys.
thank you guys so
Very
much.
good.
Appreciate it.
All right, you're very welcome. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, anyone else have anything for the board? Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
Thank you. Second,
I'll second it.
thank you, Donna. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All right.